Welcome to the HIT Podcast, HIT, Human Resources, Insurance, and Technology. I'm your host, Toby Kennedy. As we do every week, we are dropping into your feed with what I hope are bite-sized, digestible, well-curated conversations going on in the space. Join us every Tuesday for new episodes. This episode is brought to you by Montage Insurance Solutions. And without any further ado, let's get right into it. HMOs versus PPOs. I get asked all the time, what's the difference between the two? Here is a quick rundown, all you need to know. When I talk to people about HMOs, I go, listen, here's the thing that characterizes an HMO plan. You're always going to have that one gatekeeper doctor, that one primary care physician who is your access to specialists, right? And if you don't like that person, no problem. You like their shade of blue, you can change from month to month throughout the course of the year. You're not locked in like you are with open enrollment where you can only pick an HMO or a PPO. When you're on an HMO and you have your primary care physician, you can change that person from month to month. You usually need to let the carrier know by like the 10th or the 15th to go into effect first of the month following. Anyways, you can change that primary. If you get auto-assigned one you don't like, or you go and see that person, takes forever to get seen, fine, no problem. But at all points of the year, you will have that own doctor that serves as your gatekeeper. So if you're out hiking, you get a rash, you think, I need to see a dermatologist. You don't go to Yelp, you don't go to Google, you go to the guy on your card. And you show up, he's like, hey, you should see a dermatologist. You're like, I know, that's why I came. And he goes, all right, see this guy. And he gives you a specific referral to a dermatologist in that IPA group, in that network, in that independent physicians association. So you go to your gatekeeper doctor, you get the referral to any specialist you need. That's how 99% of HMOs work. So when we're talking about HMO plans, if you're looking at this versus the PPO and it's a $5 or $10 copay difference to see the doctor, not necessarily why I personally would choose one versus the other. Why I would choose one versus the other is to say, hey, listen, how do I access care? How do I sit in a doctor's office? And on the HMO plan, it's that primary care physician serving as your gatekeeper that will refer you out. On the PPO plan, by contrast, you see whoever you want, whenever you want, man. You call up that doctor, you're like, hey, when can you see me? They go, next Thursday. You go, kick rocks, man, that's too long. I want to get seen now. No problem. You see whoever you want, whenever you want. But now that nobody's telling you who to see, nobody's telling you who to see. And that's kind of a cool thing, but also not every doctor, not every lab technician, not every anesthesiologist will have a contract with your provider. They will not all be in network. And what you'll find on the PPO plan is a lot of providers, you say, hey, do you take my insurance? They go, sure, we'll take you, walk you right in. Not specific enough. They are in network. Are they contracted with your insurance? Because your insurance will perform way better for you on the in-network side. How much you are left over to pay is going to vary greatly if the provider you see is in network or out of network. Now, a lot of times I go through this and people are like, yeah, I know. That's why I take the PPO plan. So at least I get some coverage for my out-of-network doctor that I love and want to see. Fine, no problem. If you want to see an out-of-network provider, that's your prerogative on the PPO. What I'm saying is don't be surprised that they're an out-of-network provider, right? In other words, the old, Spider-Man comic book with great insurance PPO come great responsibility. Nobody's telling you who to see, so it's up to you to ascertain the network status of that provider in order to make sure your insurance performs as well as possible, right? So the main difference between the HMO and the PPO is not necessarily the $5 or $10 copays that your plan designs might have. It's how do I sit in a doctor's chair where the HMO plan will have you naming a primary care physician and you be referred out. The PPO plan, you see whoever you want, whenever you want, but you now have the onus to ask about network status. Are you in network with my carrier so that my insurance can perform a little bit better for me? Backing some of this up, the reason it works the way it works, HMOs are typically capitated products. In other words, the reason you have to name a primary care physician is because that doctor gets a rostering fee for everybody that's on the roster every month, regardless of whether or not you go. It's kind of like the gym membership you pay where regardless of how much, or in my case, how little, you go to the gym, you're still paying the same flat monthly fee. Well, that's true on the HMO side with the capitation with the doctors. Like 40% or something like that of the money that changes hands between you and the insurance company on the HMO side is not fee for service. It's not generated by you going to the doctor. It's that capitation that you're paying for the rostering. That's why you got to let them know by a certain time in order to switch, because once they cut that capitation check for the following month, you're stuck with that doctor. And that doctor will be associated with an independent physicians association, an IPA group that'll have certain hospital rights, it'll have certain specialists, it'll have certain people in the bubble sort of sharing in that capitated model. So that's sort of how those guys work, versus on the PPO side where it is fee for service, you go to the doctor and that's what triggers that provider being paid and getting to bill the insurance company. So it's a little bit different in that way. And then within the HMO world, because of the capitation, you'll find the carriers saying, hey, these tier of providers ask for a lot in capitation, which means we have to ask for a lot in premium. So if we peeled just those providers out, we can offer you a narrower network of doctors that would be a lower capitation and therefore a lower premium. So oftentimes you'll have your choice between a couple of different HMOs in the portfolio that might have a narrower, narrowest, or full network. And you'll see, hey, the benefits look the same copays to see the different doctors. But again, what might not be jumping off the page is, how do I sit in the doctor's chair? That is my quick spiel for anybody going, all right, I need to evaluate choices here between an HMO and a PPO. What am I going to pick? It kind of ends with, sometimes we also have Kaiser in the equation. Kaiser 99% of the time is an HMO, so it's going to have that referral-based care, but Kaiser's different than everybody else. The non-Kaiser carriers, the United Healthcares, the Cignas of the world, they go out and find existing providers of care. They go, hey, Cedars-Sinai, you're delivering babies, right? Can I send my members to you? Hey, CVS, you're giving out prescriptions, right? Can I send my members to you? Kaiser doesn't do that. Kaiser finds an empty plot of land, builds up a Kaiser building, stocks it full of Kaiser doctors, and says, go to a Kaiser campus. It's not a commentary on the quality of care, right? They're all amazing doctors, and Kaiser does a great job on its metrics. But what I'm saying is, if you are intending to see City of Hope, St. John's, Cedars-Sinai, then you don't take the Kaiser plan. Because when you're on the Kaiser plan, they're not only the insurance company, but they're the provider of care. So you go to a Kaiser facility, you see a Kaiser doctor, you have a Kaiser pharmacist issue you your prescriptions, right? So again, not a commentary on the quality of care, but the bigger difference is not going to be the $5 or $10 copay between the Kaiser plan or the Anthem plan. It's going to be, are you aware of the Kaiser model? Are you comfortable enough that you're near a Kaiser facility and that's where you're going to be to get your care? That is my brief overview as employees, as members are out there potentially looking at different plan designs to choose from. My 2 cents for you right there. There you go. Thank you so much for joining us. We're watching the numbers go up every week. So follow us, like, subscribe, keep us in your feed. Every Tuesday we drop what we hope is a bite-sized and digestible episode for you on the content of human resources, insurance, technology. Appreciate you guys. This week's episode is brought to you by our sponsors, Montage Insurance Solutions, Rula, TrueHue, Excel Health, the guys that keep the lights on. We're blessed to be here. Thank you so much. Join us next week. Join us every week. And until next week, make this the best week yet.
There seems to be a suspicious vision in every little decision that's made or ignored.